Welcome back to Everyday Economics, the podcast that helps you learn about the economic world happening around you every day. I'm your host, Chris Krug, CEO of the 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan Franklin News Foundation. Everyday Economics, a production of America's Talking Network. You can subscribe to all of our podcasts at americastalking.com. To support Everyday Economics, please make your tax-deductible charitable contribution by clicking the link in the show description. We are recording this episode on Wednesday, April 17th, and joining me as always, the ubiquitous Dr. Orphe Divounguy, PhD economist. Dr. O, your primary area of focus, is the housing market. A key performance indicator for that industry would be home builds, starts, and certainly completed homes. Interesting facts, of the most recent home builders sentiment report is that among home builders, sentiment is unchanged. However, there are now fewer new properties under construction. And those two facts would seem to be in conflict with each other. So can you help me, the average American, understand why that might be?
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. So first, let me just kind of make this very clear. There are more homes under construction, right? Lots of homes under construction. There's just fewer starts. Right. And I think I answered my question in the sense that, because there are so many homes under construction, builders, when they look at the future, right, their outlook, I think they're just being cautiously optimistic, right? They're saying, hey, we have a lot of work on our plate already. Let's finish building these homes. Given that, expectations have shifted, right? Higher for longer interest rates, right? Keeping financing costs very elevated, potentially. In fact, the National Association of Home Builders, in their report, says builder sentiment about current sales remains generally positive, but sales expectations for the next 6 months have fallen slightly, right?
Rates a contributing factor there?
I really think so. I think the expectation that rates were going to fall. It would be easier to finance projects, to get the funds to complete projects. And the fact that mortgage rates would have maybe come down a little bit, or at least the expectations that mortgage rates would have eased instead of gone up, meant there might be more housing demand down the pipeline. And all of those things have changed a little bit, the builder calculus. And I think that's why we're seeing starts falling in February. I think, this might actually be we might start to see a little bit of builders pull back a little bit in terms of more construction, new projects to start. That's the first thing, but that's the single family space. In the multifamily space, we got a record number of apartments under construction that are coming online at the same time as rent growth is slowing. And so there's just no reason for builders to jump in and start new apartment buildings at this point. And so that's why we're seeing starts falling in February. But yeah, whether or not builders are right. By the way, we gotta say something. We gotta give them a lot of credit, because builders are extremely good at forecasting. It's their business to forecast housing demand, because if they get it wrong, they lose a lot of money. And so what am I seeing? I'm seeing demand for housing remains pretty strong as anticipated during the spring home shopping season. You have, and I think we mentioned that before, demographic factors, rising inflation-adjusted incomes and wealth continue to support housing demand, regardless of what mortgages are doing. Right? So remember, mortgages are one force pulling down demand, but there are other factors, right? Countervailing factors that are pushing up housing demand. And so the net impact, right, is what we're seeing play out this home shopping season.
Just from the standpoint of just the everyday conversations that I have with people that are sort of out there, and we start talking about housing, that barrier to entry, we've talked about it, like the home hacking and, how people are coming up with down payments and things like that. And there are, because there is a tremendous amount of wealth among our older generations. And in some cases, that wealth gets transferred to younger people and their families for the purpose of buying a home. And some people are gifting that, and some people are just making other kinds of arrangements, sort of short, long-term loans that may be forgiven. Granddad gives you some money, dad gives you some money, mom gives you some money, grandma gives you some money, however it might work. I still think that sort of the requirements to buy a home among younger people is somewhat uncertain, and it feels daunting to them. And so I think that there's an absolute interest in home ownership among younger people. I think the capability or the possibility of them having the kind of resources to make that happen, that is literally a person by person situation.
Absolutely. It's a personal decision. It depends on your finances. And it even depends on whether or not you have help coming from the bank of mom and dad. Whether your parents owned a home and were able to extract home equity from their home to be able to help you out. Yeah, very much so. I think you hit it you hit the nail on the head. There's major affordability challenges out there, especially, last couple of weeks, mortgage rates have again increased. And that's going to price out a number of folks. But at the same time, right, here's the good news story here. At the same time, we've seen a surge in supply, new listings, existing homes, resale inventory increasing, and with more options.
You projected that this would eventually break up and that we would see more houses come onto the market. And I think it's a function of time. And this is not all, like Southwest Florida and people that bought homes during COVID. Now they're looking at it and it's like, this doesn't make sense for me. We're talking about nationally that the inventories have increased.
In the first week of April, right? Just the first week of April this year compared to last year, the supply of homes, existing homeowners coming on the market is up 33%. So I guess the big question here is what will happen to house prices? Will that increase in supply, lower prices, get, prices to ease a little bit?
Let me ask you a question about that. That there are some people I think that are out there on the buyer side, especially first time buyers and maybe even like I would say second time buyers that don't have a tremendous amount of equity in the home that they own, that are kind of hoping for significant reductions in pricing. I personally don't expect that. I don't see that. This is not 2008. This is not fire sales, coming our way. I just don't see that, largely because, as you and I have talked about dozens of times on this podcast, that we are somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 million homes short.
37% lower than we were before the pandemic. 4.3 million homes, housing deficit. And it combines for sale and rentals. Back in 21, that number is probably increased, actually. Some people might say, well, we built a lot. Well, yeah, we built a lot, but a lot of people came into this country since then, right? And so but anyway, yeah, you're absolutely spot on. Nothing compared to 2008. This is a situation where in 2008, homeowners couldn't cut their prices. They were stuck. So they went into delinquency and foreclosure.
That's right. There's a lot of walkaways in that 2008 to 2000 or to 2011. There were a lot of walkaways.
Today, homeowners are sitting on record home equity. So the ones who are selling can actually afford to cut the price a little bit. No big deal. If my home value increased 40, 50% in the last couple of years, I'm sitting pretty. I can give you a price cut, right? And so, very different scenario. Delinquency rates are at an all-time low. Sellers are out there because they want to sell, because they feel like moving on to another house, a better house, a newer house.
Or maybe they have to because their job situation changed.
Yeah, but even that, like the extent of that to me is probably, in my thing, is probably very limited given the fact that work from home, hybrid situations continue to persist to some extent, right? They're wealthier. They have more options. The labor market's still somewhat tight. Unemployment rate is 3.8%. The workers have options. Yeah, it's not like, It's not as good as it was in 21 for workers when they were just quitting all the time, but it's still pretty good. And so, yeah, I think we're in a situation where hopefully some price easing will help improve affordability. That combined with the fact that incomes are rising and wealth is still rising, right? Financial wealth is still rising. You combine those two things and you get a slightly more affordable situation, at least enough to offset the increase in mortgage rates, potentially. Housing demand still on solid ground, in my opinion. You have a lot of doom and gloom people saying, well, 8 months supply of new homes and the price of new homes coming. No, fewer builders are offering price cuts than last month. Fewer builders are offering incentives than last month. The average price cut on a new home is still 6%, has remained that way for, I don't know, the better part of a year and a half now or something like that.
Yeah, I was going to say about a couple of years, yeah.
And so, those are not desperate builders. They're still selling homes. They're just being cautious. That's all. And so for the doom and gloom people, I say, hey guys, you got that wrong again. Call me when you finally get one right.
Well, and on that note, let's call it to an end. For Orphe, Divounguy, this has been Chris Krug. Subscribe to Everyday Economics and dozens of other quality podcasts at americastalking.com.
Attention parents, teachers, and taxpayers. Do you care about the decisions being made in K-12 public education? Do you want to know how those decisions impact your students and school district? Chalkboard News has you covered. We're delivering fact-based reporting on the policies that shape school safety, curriculum, and recovery from learning loss. At Chalkboard News, we're cutting through the politics and focusing on the facts behind the issues impacting students, teachers, and families. Get this news delivered to your inbox for free by signing up at chalkboardnews.com.